Welcome back. Breakfast analysis. We're a bit late today. It's like 12:30 my time. Usually we start at like noon my time. And the reason for that is because I woke up at 10 o'clock because I said I wanted to make waffles on Twitter. And then I woke up at 10 o'clock. My alarm went off. And I shut off my alarm and I went back to bed until 11:30. So we're here now at 12:30 and we're just starting now. Apologies for the delays, but if you're on YouTube, then you don't care. Or if you're watching in any other format other than Twitch, you don't care. So we can get into the analysis. My breakfast for today is a sad excuse for a breakfast. It's just a coffee, but it's roll up the rim at Tim Hortons right now. So we'll see what we win at the end of this episode when I roll up my rim. I think probably this will be a longer episode because there's a lot to cover. We're going to be going over LAN results for the teams that ended up going to LAN. We're going to be going over ESEA results for all the teams. And then we're going to be going over what's up for the future for these teams. Who can make playoffs? We finished week 6, which means we're 2/3 of the way through the regular season, which means I'm going to start looking at playoffs. And yeah, so we can start things off with our rankings, which we usually do. I think everything's going well on the stream. So last week, and this is a mistake because it wasn't last week, but last episode's rankings. Oh, actually, hold up, boys and girls. I'm gonna pause the breakfast. I'm gonna pause the analysis for 1 second before it starts. And I'm going to update the stream info to say breakfast analysis number 4 instead of breakfast analysis number 3. Okay. Now we're better. We can come back. Now, okay, so last episode's rankings, this was 3 weeks ago, I want to say. Something like that. I mean, it's been a while. So we'll take a look. This is like ESEA rankings, so that's something. But I think when we last looked, it was just after Snakewater Week, I want to say. Because, yeah, because LAN was on like the 18th, right? Or like LAN started on the 17th and like 16th, and so I left on the 15th. So I wouldn't be able to do this the week of Granary. So we've played Granary, Process, and Gully Wash since we last did these rankings. And last time, Tech, Ascent, Swift, Velocity, Anime List, 8K, Black Swan, TF Crew, Hooligans for Hire. There have definitely been some changes and some exciting ones as well as we move down here. Whew. Ascent have dropped out of 2nd on my rankings. Velocity have moved down to 5th. And 8K moved up into a playoff position. And Swift have moved into 2nd place. I want to reiterate that this is, so I try to, for these rankings, I try to be like objective in the fact that even if I think, oh, well, maybe Velocity is a better team than 8K, they lost to 8K, so they're going below them. That's kind of where I'm at. Same with Swift and Ascent. Maybe Ascent could beat Swift if they had a rematch, but they didn't. And I don't look at scrim results. I don't look at anything. It's just match results. So this is how we're ranking them right now. And also, I try to, not bring any bias into it. So, like, I try to say, even if I like Tech, I'm not going to put them at the top if they lose every game. Clearly, they haven't been losing every game. But, once we get their analysis, look at this, look at this, look at this. That's a little exciting. So, yeah, what is interesting to note is that this isn't my predictions for how the final season rankings will be on ESEA. This isn't my prediction for if ESEA ever loads their website. I can show you what I'm trying to say right now. But this isn't the prediction for the actual standings. At this point, it's going to be kind of hard for 8K to actually make it into playoffs. Not impossible, and not even that hard. I would still probably give the edge to Velocity if I'm predicting who's going to make playoffs. This isn't a prediction. This is like who's the best type of a list. So, I'm not trying to predict this list right here is what I'm trying to say. So, don't expect that. What's up, Credible? We just finished going over this week's rankings. We can move on to our first team that we're going into, though. Velocity Esports. Got a lot of links to open up here. Wikipedia for the LAN results, ESEA just for their team results, and then a interview as well that Jarrett gave on Team Fortress TV. I don't want to just straight up read this interview because you can just read the interview, and most people probably already have. But it's a very good read. Jarrett gave a great interview, and Bleferick, I think that's how you pronounce his name. That's how I always pronounce it in my head. Has pumped out a shitload of articles, and they're all really good, so you should all read them. But we'll start off with their LAN results. Their LAN results kind of sucked for Velocity. They had to play through the open qualifier, obviously, and I mean, they were predicted to do pretty good. Like, I thought they could have gotten, like, maybe even second or something after Captain's, like, injury, we'll call it. So I thought Velocity really could have done very well in this tournament, and they didn't do bad. They didn't, like, lose to any garbage teams, but every team that they could have beaten, they lost to. So kind of sad there. So like when I say could have beaten, I mean like had a chance but wasn't 100%, you know? I mean, we can look at their results. They started off the invite bracket with a 5-0 and a 5-1 against Fryotech. All right, fine. You're playing Fryotech. You've been tired. You've been playing all day already. No big deal, okay? Coming against King's Crew. King's Crew's like an IM team with like 3 subs, right? So you should be able to beat this team pretty decisively if you're like looking to make top 3, top 2 at this event. A 4-3 for your first map, followed by a 5-0. The 5-0's fine, but almost losing your first map to King's Crew. And this wasn't even the first close match they had. I remember it didn't get streamed, but in the open bracket, King's Crew and Velocity played. I think it was on Viaduct, and it was just the closest match. I mean, it was back. I think it was a 4-3 on Viaduct, I'm pretty sure. And just we had a whole bunch of people just behind them on their computers, and it was insane. They were sitting right next to each other too. So I mean, these two teams have been very close on certain maps. I mean, clearly not on the second one here on Gully Wash. And King's Crew never really managed to find their upset win this LAN, but they had a lot of really close games. So I mean, look at these logs. Like, I don't even know what was going wrong. I looked at these logs, and I really like don't know. Like, give me an Ana if I had like crazy damage. I guess it wasn't even crazy. I just said that because of their top, but it was just a little bit higher than Showstopper. 299, 296, 294. It seems for me like everybody on Velocity kind of played pretty well. Shimu got a lot of frags. Like the scouts for Velocity played really, really well, with a lot of frags each. But it felt like on the other side, on King's Crew, they just had like a couple of really good players, and then like these bottom 4 really were the bottom 4. Like decisively, they're pretty much below. So I don't understand how it was a 4-3. I kind of want to watch over this game because I don't think it was streamed. No, so. That'll be an interesting one to see what happened there. But that's just the beginnings. That's just the beginnings of the LAN troubles for Velocity. So they narrowly beat King's Crew in their first match. They made them pretty decisive in the second one. Then they go up against Swift. Swift's probably their biggest rival. Probably the team that, like... Oh, we're going to get into that match. Don't worry, Credible. We're going to get into that one. But, like, Swift versus Velocity, probably the teams that were, like, the closest going into the LAN. Like, for Velocity... This is the team where they will beat, like, almost exactly 50% of the time. Look at these results. A 5-1 and a 5-0. And Swift were playing with subs. Swift had skis on Medic. And Zilly was playing, like, Soldier, I think. So, Velocity coming with their full roster. They get 1 round in 2 maps. And I don't even know what's going on in these logs. Again, I guess they played all day, but, like, Jesus, that's still not the result you want to see. I mean, they're just low on the damage and on the kills. I don't know. I don't really want to look at the logs of a 5-0 and a 5-1, but, like... So they have a disappointing group stage, what I'm trying to say. Disappointing round robin. They don't get any crazy upset wins. They do beat King's Crew, which leaves them in 3rd, as we can see right here. But ideally, we're looking to snipe, like, maybe 2nd or something here. So they couldn't find that. And then they go into playoffs here. So their first match is against Big Chips. It's a best of 1, and it's 4-2. And Big Chips go up 2-0. I remember we streamed this one, and I remember I didn't cast it. I don't think. I either cast it or I was watching, like, front row in the audience at LAN. And I was sitting there thinking, like, Velocity is about to get knocked out in the first round. Because this was literally, like, the first rounds were best of 1s. So, like, if Velocity hadn't picked it up after those first 2 rounds... That would have been it. They would have just been knocked out of the tournament. So the fact that they're already, like, playing with that on death's door the first round of after the first round of playoffs. Like that's, I don't know, that's not good. And then they move on against Ascent. They have two not that close games, 5-1 on Sunshine and a 5-2 on Badlands, and this is what actually knocks them out of the tournament. This wasn't a game they were expecting to lose, or expecting to win rather, especially with their results previously at the LAN. But I think before the LAN, this was a winnable match, especially with Ascent's like new roster. Ascent really picked it up for LAN, and Velocity really didn't. So I'm not gonna say this is a surprising result or anything like that, but I think this match had the potential to be a lot closer than it actually was. So Velocity, they really didn't ever have a good game in the invite bracket. Maybe in the open bracket, like they did win the open bracket. They didn't lose a match in the open bracket, which basically just means they beat Black Swan and a bunch of open teams. But yeah, so a bit of a disappointing start for Velocity. And you know, it's interesting if you read Jarrett's interview, he actually has a comment, and he said they thought they thought they did pretty well. They said fatigue hurt them on Friday with the seeding games. So that's the first 3 round robin. So that's the match where they went 4-3 with like King's Crew. That's probably what he's talking about. Also the match against Swift where they only got 1 round and 2 maps, right? So they're going to blame that one on fatigue. Fair enough. They did play a lot of matches. Like, despite being knocked out in the second round of playoffs, I think Velocity played more games than anybody else or any other team at LAN. Because they played all of the open bracket and they were like scrimming on Thursday as well. So they played a lot. But if we read this interview, Saturday felt normal. They said the results seem similar. Besides their Swift games, the results seem similar to how their all online games would go. But I feel like they don't play against King's Crew online. But I feel like they don't go 4-3 against King's Crew online. They also apparently just had swapped their Pocket and Roamer Soldier, Kryptonite, and Showstopper. So maybe that hurt their performance. But again, Jarrett kind of thinks that's not what they wanted. They blame it on comms as well. I know they were pretty upset in that one game against... I don't remember who was... I think it was against Ascent. I think this was their last game against Ascent. And this one I casted with Mela. And they were coming back. They had made this comeback. It was like... This was the Badlands. It was like 4-2, or it was 3-2, I think. And it was like 3-1, and then... I think it was 4-1. It was 3-1 or 4-1. And then Velocity came back. They got a really fast round, and everybody was just cheering for Velocity. But they actually got really upset about that because that meant that they couldn't calm with each other. And they got completely rolled and lost the match the next round. So it was kind of disappointing for them. They didn't really like the crowd atmosphere. Velocity just not doing super well on LAN. What's up, Phantom? We're just talking about Velocity's LAN results and how it wasn't quite what they wanted. In my eyes, at least. They seem to be fine with it, but I think they should have expected more. We can, yes, I mean, because we still have 3 weeks to go over, that means we still have to go over, I guess we did talk about their match against Swift already in last episode. But I think, again, it's interesting, like, 4 weeks ago in Snakewater, they barely beat Swift. It's a very close match, probably like one of the closest matches we've had. I want to say the closest match we've had in the season, but we've had a lot of close matches this season already, so I can't say that exactly, but one of the closest for sure, definitely top 5. And it's a 3-4. It doesn't go to Golden Cap, but Velocity very, very narrowly take this match. Then they show up to LAN and they get completely steamrolled against Swift, which they did comment on in their interviews, a 5-1 and a 5-0. So I don't know. I think that's pretty interesting. Like that they're having so many issues. I mean, we look at the stats on this game, and it's big numbers. It was clearly a long game. It was an hour and 5 minutes long. We're gonna see longer games as we look more into this episode and other teams, but. Really, it seems to me like Shamu's one of the standout players. I mean, this game he top fragged and he top damage for their team. In their other like logs against Swift, I mean, obviously there's gonna be some players on this team that don't have great logs. But even here, I mean, Shamu's keeping up with the frags and like 211 damage per minute isn't great. But as a scout, I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world. So I think Shamu's been playing well for them, but just. I don't know, the rest of the team at LAN didn't really show up as much as maybe they wanted them to, so bit disappointing there. And then they have a lot of really strange results after that. So they have a 2-3 against 8K. They get 5-0 by Freitag. Okay, who cares? They drop around to Hooligans for Hire. That's not that big of a deal. Then they barely beat my anime list. And then they lose 5-3 to Ascent. And, like, these just don't seem consistent. Like, these two matches, like, all right, well, we're gonna bring the Swift match into the fray here. So they beat what I currently have listed as the second best team in Invite, right? At that point in time, they were probably still like third or fourth, but they beat Swift, very close, but still, you know, they still beat them, right? And then they come out and they lose to Running with Scissors in a 2-3. Again, doesn't go to Golden Cap. They get 1 round a half. This was like not a game that they should have lost at all, because Running with Scissors isn't even a top 4 team, right? Running with Scissors is like a team from like 2015, probably not that far away, or not that long ago, but like 2017, 2016, something like that. And they just happen to come back, and now they're beating Velocity 2-3. To be fair, I mean, when we get into Running with Scissors, like, they definitely deserve that. They're really good right now. But this was probably like the first kind of out of the woodworks match for 8K, where people really didn't realize that, oh, they're actually really good right now. And then they come out and beat Velocity, and this was a surprise match for sure. And they come out, and I mean, if you look at the scoreline, they go down 3-0 to Anime List, and it looks like they're gonna lose the game, but then they like come back and they get 3 rounds in the second half, barely win it in overtime. So that's still a win on against Anime, but this is another team where like they shouldn't be losing. This is not a playoff caliber team, and Velocity historically have been. You know, Velocity have been together for so long, and Anime have as well. But it's just not the same quality of players that you see on this team. So they really shouldn't be losing games like this, and especially like, I mean, the frags and damage on these matches are kind of close. Clearly not with this one. I mean, Running with Scissors, they had like, what is this, 6,000 more damage and quite a few more frags as well. So I don't know. This one is pretty close, although quite a bit more damage for Velocity. So they're really just not stacking up against these teams that they should be able to beat. And yeah, they beat Anime, but they still went down 3-0. And I think this is more a case of the chokes for Anime. We'll kind of talk about it when we get into their little section, but and then they come out and they have a 5-3 against Ascent. So you watch these two games, you're like, all right, fine, Velocity's garbage. They're not making playoffs. They're not going to do anything. But 3 rounds against Ascent is really good, especially since like we were going to cast this one, and literally like the players didn't want it like the STV was broken, and so the players didn't want it casted, or they wouldn't change servers because they didn't think it was going to be a close match. Then they come out and they win like 3 rounds. Like that's a close round or a close match in my eyes. So I don't know. That's pretty disappointing to me that we didn't get to cast this game. And, you know, some of their players didn't maybe have standout performances, like Pete, 206 DPM and 16 frags. A little questionable. I think I heard he had, like, just taken some cough syrup or something before the match. I don't know if that was this match or not, because he was, like, sick, and he blamed that on his poor performance. Whatever. Everybody's allowed to have bad games every now and again. But certainly on Ascent, I mean, a couple of standout players that you don't really see on the side of Velocity, like 302 and 25 for Patty. There's really nobody that has a comparable stat line. Maybe Shamu, but Shamu's not really hitting that damage. Jared's kind of hitting that damage, but only 16 frags. He's a demo man as well, so, you know, Ascent just kind of being the better team in that one. This wasn't the match they expected to win, especially after these 2 games. This is a match they were expected to get rolled on. They expected to be rolled on, and they still did well. So Velocity's results are very strange right now. That's basically what I'm trying to highlight. And I'm not sure why. They're probably in playoffs, but maybe not. Yeah, like losing to AK is what actually put their playoff spot in jeopardy. So that was a while ago now. But because they weren't able to like find any sneak wins against Ascent or anything, now they're kind of a little bit worried. They have 7 rounds right now, or 7 wins right now. They should get this win against Black Swan, probably. So let's say 8, 9 because they'll beat TF Crew, and so that's their minimum. All right, minimum rounds is 9. They beat Swift, they'll get 10. If they can beat Froyo, that's a tall order. They could maybe get an 11th, and then if they beat 8K in their last match against on Badlands, That could be the game. I'm really hoping the final playoff spot gets determined by this match. Last match of the season, 8K versus Velocity. That would be hype to watch. But a couple of things have to fall into place for that to happen, so we'll actually see how that goes. If we want this result, if we want the super intense 8K versus Velocity final, I think we want Swift to beat Velocity in this match. There's actually a comment on this. I don't know what it says. They're going to try to play it on Thursday. Sure. And so... yeah, so I think Velocity, they need to lose this one. Again, we'll talk a little bit more when we get into 8K's part. But 8K definitely have an opportunity to snipe this final playoff spot. And if Velocity keep playing like if Velocity play how they played against Anime and 8K, if this result happens, but this doesn't happen, this overtime doesn't end up happening, or this comeback doesn't end up happening, or this Anime collapse doesn't end up happening, Velocity are in a bit of trouble. Moving on. Yeah, next week's game should be Swift. So, okay, yeah, if they beat Swift, as I say here, if they beat Swift, they should be in playoffs, because at that point they're at least 10 wins, assuming they don't lose to something stupid like Black Swan or Hooligans for Hire. They're at least 10 wins, a minimum of 10 wins, and I don't think 8K can get 10 wins. So, Hooligans for Hire, not a LAN team, so we're not going to be looking at the LAN results, but still, they have a few interesting things to talk about. First of all, they're getting better. The first, 2 weeks of the season, they didn't get any rounds. Then they finally got a first round in week 3. They got 2 against Swift. And they went back to some 5-0s, but, I mean, other than their game against Ascents, they had 3 close-ish matches in a row where they at least got 1 round in all of those games. So that's really good to see for them. Obviously against Ascents, that's going to be, that was a tough match. They expect a 5-0 there. I don't know if it's going to be possible for them to get a win. I mean, they're up against Anime. Maybe that's a win. Maybe they got a win against Black Swan. Next week's actually looking pretty good. And they still play TF Crew as well, so they've got some not that good teams that they can maybe secure wins off of. They also play Swift and Fire Attack in the rest of the season. And I mean, those are probably going to be 5-0s. Maybe they can sneak 2 rounds off Swift again, but... you know, for them, playoffs I don't think is an option. They could get max 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wins. So no, it's it's mathematically impossible. But I don't think that was ever their goal. If they get 1 win, that'll be great. And even if they don't, if they keep up this streak of just improvement of actually getting rounds, that'll be really good for them. I think they should consider that a win. They did change their roster around. They dropped Phantom, they moved Fabulous over to Medic, and then they picked up Vari. I think Phantom's in my chat right now, so I'm going to watch what I say here. But basically, they Reflect this as in his interview. It sucks to have to change roster around mid-season. Phantom's having a lot of difficulty adapting the higher level of play required of him in Invite. But they're still excited for the future of their team. They're thrilled to have Vari back. So, Phantom puts a sad face in chat. Yeah, so, you know... based on this quote, it seems like Phantom maybe was not performing to standards that Hooligans for Hire were looking for. That's unfortunate, Phantom. I thought you did great. Let's see, when did they actually swap you out? Because that interview, I think, was a while ago. So were you playing in this match? You're playing in this match. And then here's where they swapped you out. So, I mean, we look at his results. You know, he seemed to be doing fine. 27 deaths is a lot, but it was a long game. It was an hour and 7, and the enemy medic got 21 deaths. So, alright, fair enough. In this one... oh, in this one they had Brule playing medic, right? And Phantom, I don't know what class Phantom was playing. You got cut after your match versus TF Crew because you played really bad and you wanted to win that. Yeah, your match against TF Crew was definitely the one where, the most likely match for you to win, because TF Crew is probably the 2nd worst team in Invite. So that was definitely a game you were looking to win. And from the things of it, it looks like you almost made a comeback, you guys. I don't know exactly what order these rounds were scored, but you get anything first round, and you did manage to come back, so that's good. But, yeah. That's sad that you got cut, Phantom. But I still think that, was this the team that I still think the, yeah, roster swap seems shaky. So I'm kind of on your side. This new medic isn't doing, or they put, it's not a new medic, but the new medic that they do have in is he's kind of... Fabulous is not playing super great from what I saw in his stats. And the new player as well, Vari, isn't doing absolutely fantastic either. Let's see, I think in every match he's played, Fabulous has had at least one drop. So that's a little shaky, but, you know, he's still just re-warming up to Medic. I know he's played it before. And then Vari, I mean, 215 DPM, lowest DPM in the server against Ascent. And it's against Ascent, so, you know, we'll give him a break. And 7 frags, that's pretty good for him. Then Vari, as he comes in here, 237 DPM, so still kind of on the low side, but top fragging, so actually not bad for his team. Vari seems to be playing well in the match against Velocity, where they got 1 round. Then against 8K, where they got 2 rounds, how does Vari do? 166 DPM and 10 frags. So, seems like he's kind of lacking on the damage side on all things. He does sort of make up for it with kills, and he's playing Scout, right? So, that's good, but, obviously, I mean, this isn't going to be a roster that's causing any upset wins, unless it's against TF Crew. I could see them winning against TF Crew, maybe against Anime, maybe against Black Swan, but it'll be tough for them for sure. There's one other thing I wanted to highlight. Oh, yeah. If we just look at these, the players, I think the player to watch on Hooligans for Hire, on a team like this, you're not necessarily looking for the team to... Well, ideally, if the team improves, that's great. But they got a long way to go as a team if they want to make it all the way to like the tops of invite. But one player to watch is definitely Reflecto in my eyes. 292 DPM against Ascent, and then coming in on this one like 296. He's just very consistently getting a shitload of damage per minute. 323 in their game against Running with Scissors. That's a crazy high number. And, you know, there's some high numbers on 8K as well. Like, I don't have to talk about how good Saigai is, because everybody knows how good Saigai is. But Reflecto's a sleeper, dude. Reflecto in a couple of seasons, I think Reflecto's going to be, like, a top invite player. So, watch out for that one. That's my bold prediction for Hooligans for Hire. Reflecto's going to, like, leave his team after 2 seasons, and he's going to, like, get picked up on, like... On, like, an 8K or a My Enemy List level team. That's my prediction. And then that team's going to work hard enough and get into playoffs. And then Hooligans for Hire, who knows what's going to happen with the rest of them. If they play Invite next season and like the seasons afterwards and stick together, especially if they keep on with Reflecto, then maybe they could actually like climb the ranks. But I think it's going to be a while for them to actually make it all the way up to like the mid or top invite scene, just because they're starting at a very low position right now. But I think Reflecto could jump up if he left his team and went on a better team. We'll see if that's what he wants to do. I have no idea. I'm just throwing stuff out there. Yeah, still potential to win before the end of the season, but they're not making playoffs or anything anytime soon. TF Crew are our next team. Speaking of potential teams that Hooligans for Hire could beat. Come up here. TF Crew really don't have that much interesting stuff going on in the past 3 weeks. Obviously, they beat Hooligans for Hire, which is good for them. First win of the season. Maybe only win of the season. We'll see what happens in the rest of their games. Oh, yeah, here's something I wanted to highlight. They haven't had a 0-round game in 6 games. So, I mean, and they played some tough teams. They played Swift, and they got 2 rounds. They played Black Swan, they got 2 rounds. They played Anime, they got a round. They played Hooligans for Hire, and they won. They played Ascent, and they still got a round. And they played 8K, and they still got a round. So, it's good to see that even when they're playing against these top teams that they're definitely not going to beat. Like, nobody goes into an Ascent TF Crew game thinking that TF Crew have a chance. I'm sorry. It's just never going to happen that a team like TF Crew beats a team like Ascent. But getting a round off them and not just completely rolling over, I don't know exactly what happened. In fact, I do know what happened for this one, because TF Crew messaged me after this game, and they said, hey, when you do your breakfast analysis episode, it's going to seem... Don't say it's good that we got 1 round against Ascent, because they were playing 5v6 for the first round. I remember them specifically telling me that, but I don't care. I still think that... I'm still proud of TF Crew, and I'm glad they were able to get a round. And I like their humbleness. So, TF Crew, despite playing 5v6 against Ascent for a while, I'm still proud of how they've done, and they should be too, because they have been definitely improving throughout the season. This is the same thing you saw with Hooligans for Hire, right? Start of the season, a lot of 5-0s. 5-0, they did get a 5-2 here against Black Swan, okay. Then a 4-0, then a 5-0. But since then, it's just been like a lot of 5-1s. It's going to be tough to keep up that streak of getting 0 rounds, because they play against Froyotech and 8K next week. But Friotech have been definitely, after LAN, Friotech have definitely taken their foot off the gas pedal, and we'll see when we investigate some other teams what I mean by that. But I think that means Friotech is definitely not beatable, but roundable, in that they can definitely take some rounds off Frio. And they've already played against 8K and taken rounds off them. Now, I think this was definitely a weaker 8K than what we currently see. If we open this match page, we'll see what roster they were playing with when they got the first round. Yeah, so this is when they still had Mikey. And then all their classes weren't swapped around. So it'll be tougher to get around this time. But, you know, I think they can still do it if they're wanting to improve. I think they just won the RGB LAN. So, congrats to TF Crew for winning that one. Not quite as prestigious as Rewind, but they're still LAN champions. So, keep that in mind. Yeah. Oh, yeah, some silly logs in the past few games. I want to highlight that as well. Just some weird stuff going on. Like, against Swift, if you look at TF Crew, they've got, like, I guess against Swift it's not that crazy, but I think they were tied, like, 2-2 at the beginning, and, like, Swift being tied with TF Crew was like, excuse me. So that was, like, a bit strange, at least, to start things off against them. And Stochastic got a lot of frags, but otherwise no super standout players. 260 DPM was the top of their team with Smitty. Then they play against Black Swan, right? So this was the match before this. And was this the super weird one? No, this is the one where everybody's very low DPM. It was an hour and 23 minutes. I can only assume that there was some sort of a pause here. And then you just randomly look at Mirror Man, who's hitting 277, where the next highest in the server is 113.7. So I know we're not talking about Black Swan right now, but what are they feeding Mirror Man? Because he apparently just had, like, the best game of his life. Because all I can assume, because it was a minute and 20 long, and it wasn't even overtime, I have to assume there was a pause in this, which explained everybody else's damage. Like, alright, if you only did 113 damage, but there was a long-ass pause, sure, nobody cares. But 277? I mean, basically, you could more than double everybody's damage right now, and that would make sense for a normal game, but not Mirror Man. Mirror Man, if you double his stats, would have over 500 damage per minute. So, if this pause hadn't happened, I mean, Mirror Man clearly is just, like, I don't know, he had a very weirdly good game. And the only thing that I could maybe expect is if it was, like, 5v6 for a while, and then they had a really long pause to get Mirror Man in, but he actually wasn't in for the pause. I think in that case, if Mirror Man didn't have to actually experience the pause, if he only came in afterwards and he got that crazy damage, or then he got the damage, his damage counter would start counting when he joined the server. So in that sense, I think Mirror Man, that might explain his absurdly high damage relative to everybody else. But I like to imagine Mirror Man is just a god, so that's what we're going to go with. Then against Anime List, a 5-1 scoreline is not really what you expect here. Anime is a very strange team, and I guess we'll talk about them a bit later, but I at least don't place them high enough to 5-1 TF Crew. If TF Crew is going to get, you know, 2 rounds against some teams, I'd expect it maybe to be them and not Swift, but whatever. It seemed like they played pretty well. Rocket Wizard, aka KTB, didn't have a great game necessarily, but Smitty definitely put in the work for his team. I think the player to watch on TF Crew is Smitty, because he has been consistently hitting top damage, and then frags have been very good as well. So I like what Smitty's doing. What's up, Metna? We're just going over TF Crew's results right now. TF Crew don't have a whole lot to say about them. One of the less interesting teams, but still some cool things to talk about with them. We move on now to Black Swan, though. And Black Swan sure have a lot of stuff. I really just want to say, after LAN, I really like Black Swan as a team and as their players. They gave a really good interview here. Maybe I can zoom in a couple of times so that people can read this. I hope that's... Oh, we'll zoom out one more time. There we go. So, if you read this interview, I'm not going to read it to everybody because I'm sure you can, but this comment exactly expresses my feelings after reading the interview. They had a really good LAN, actually, relative to Velocity, which is the other LAN team we've talked about so far. We'll go back on this page and investigate things here. So, they were in Group B. Started off, their first match was against 7. Alright, that's going to be a rough time. 5-0, 5-0. Fair enough. Especially since they're playing with Zeep as well. They had a lot of roster issues at LAN, but still played very well. Then they play against Big Chips, And Big Chip's kind of like a mix of a pug team almost. We can go over their roster for those who know. Ghostak, Sam, Kawa, Sideways, Whoopi Goldberg, Max, and Bruli. So that's Big Chips, and they narrowly win both matches. It's a score of 1 both times, and neither of these went into overtimes because, well, actually, could you tie these games? No, I don't think you could tie in these games. These might have gone into overtime. I'm not sure. Yeah, there was one golden cap. Okay, so a golden cap on Snakewater followed by a process match. They still win both, so they're having close matches against lower level teams, but they've got a lot of roster issues and stuff like that, so it's not actually that disappointing. Whereas like when Velocity has a close match against an IM team, that's a that's a scary moment because Velocity's not supposed to be losing rounds to IM teams. But Black Swan with a very shaky roster, they've got like subs, and then like the roster they brought to LAN isn't even their regular last online roster, even without Zeep standing in for Fruit. So that's fair enough. And then they lose to Ascend. I mean, they're not taking any rounds off the great teams, but that's not really their goal coming in this. Then they have a match against King's Crew, and it's very close. This was probably, like, game of the LAN, if I'm being completely honest. This was such a good game to watch. I remember I was watching up in, like, the, like, staff lounge or whatever for Esports Arena. And it was absolutely crazy how close this game was. Everybody was so hyped, especially because King's Crew is a very loud team. Yeah, I remember like in the group stages day, so on Friday, everybody was just kind of sitting around their PCs. Yeah, you could walk around, it was pretty chill, you stand behind a team, and then you would just hear like screaming from the other side of the arena, and it's like King's Crew hit an air shot or something like that. And they were their own hype men. They didn't need people to cast them because they were already like bringing all the hype to their games. So narrowly won this one, very close game. I do recommend anybody watches this VOD because it was very, very close. And then they have then they move on against Swift, and that's the end of their LAN story. So, still, I thought it was very entertaining LAN from them, and they seemed to have a lot of fun with it. They did better than they thought they would. They exceeded their expectations. I mean, everything about this interview is very great. You should definitely read it. They were having a rough time. They had to bring in a sub. They're not going to bring Ninjax to LAN because a South American player flying to California is quite costly, and they don't have a sponsor or anything, so that would be tough. Then they kind of start talking about their ESEA games, and yeah, so they say they're performing rather proficiently. They haven't scored any upsets against top teams, but they haven't gotten upset either. Yeah, that's pretty much what I would say as well. They've really only beaten TF Crew and Hooligans for Hire. So, they haven't lost to those teams either. They're basically they're like 7th on the positioning, and they really don't hit above or below their weight class. So that's good. If we keep that scoreline going, they should lose this match and then win this match against Hooligans for Hire. Coming up, I don't think they can mathematically make playoffs. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Maybe if Velocity lose every single match, including against like Hooligans for Hire, and Black Swan win every single match, including against Ascent, I think they can mathematically still make playoffs, but realistically, it's probably not happening. I think they said at the beginning of the season they wanted to go for playoffs, but it's not really that surprising that they didn't make it. But they had some good results overall. Nothing crazy for them. Basically, oh yeah, here's the match against Freo I kind of wanted to highlight. A 3-5 against Fryotech is actually the closest match Freo has had this whole time. Which is, worrying. It's like, oh, is Black Swan the sleeper team that's upsetting Fryotech now? Probably not. If you look at these logs, Shade had 136 DPM. Eric had like 131 DPM. So I don't know how long Shade was actually playing Medic for. It seems like Fryotech rolled through the first half and then maybe were off class in a bit or doing some silly stuff in the second half. I can only imagine that Banny's stream viewers would know what happened in that game, but I do not. So I think it's kind of good to see Fryotech sort of stepping off the gas in a sense like this. I don't want to talk too much about Fryotech because they have their own section, but After winning land, they definitely seem to have gotten a little more lax. They haven't had a 5-0 since land, so interesting. They certainly don't have as much to prep for anymore, so that might have been part of the reason why they went so hard in the first half of the season. But as far as Black Swan are going, I mean, they shouldn't be discredited for this game. Clearly, I mean, Ether had a crazy good game. 31 frags, 328 DPM. Topping the server for DPM, actually. And not frags, because Yomps is in the server, but still very good performance by him. Jinx went pretty huge as well. Jay did very well. Their South American player, I always like to highlight this guy just because he's playing on quite high ping, and it's a very interesting player to watch. Not doing too hot in their game against Tech. 220 DPM is a bit on the low side compared to everybody else in the server. He beat Shade and Eric though, so that's something. I don't know what classes these players were on for the whole match, but you know, he can hold that high, I guess. And then their game against 8K, I guess we can just take a look at this one real quick. 8K's a very good roster right now, so the fact that they managed to still get a round off them is promising. I know Mr. Slyn was excited when we talked a lot at LAN, me and Mr. Slyn, and the topic of Black Swan came up, and he was happy that his boys were doing pretty well. I think this team actually has potential to upset 8K or my anime list, specifically anime list. I think, do they play anime list throughout the rest of the season? They do. I think they could win this match on Sunshine. Like TF Crew, it's gonna be very hard for TF Crew to punch like above their weight class to beat a team that's better than them. But Black Swan, I think it's very doable for them. They're a good team. What was their last match against Anime? Oh, it was a 5-0. So maybe I shouldn't speak like that. But this is history class for TF2. Kind of, yeah. It's not really a history lesson for TF2 as much as it's going over stats and match results for TF2. So in my eyes, that's TF2. So yeah, Black Swan. Definitely looking forward to the rest of the season. They got 5 more matches to go. Should be picking up a win against Hooligans for Hire, and then maybe if they can upset Anime. Otherwise, they're just playing top 4 teams, and that's going to be a rough time for them. Yeah. Now we can look at Ascent. Ascent's probably one of the most interesting teams to look at this week, because they've had a lot going on. They had a very good LAN. Didn't quite win it, but they got second. So, we start off here. I mean, obviously, coming into LAN, Ascent looked really shaky. They had those 2 last-minute roster swaps, as I'm sure everybody's aware. But you know, coming in against Big Chips, this is still going to win this one, 5-0, 5-0, easy. Then they have a 1-1 against 7. This is the only 1-1 in the group stages where they each took a map. And this was a very close game, especially on Snakewater. And Process was very good as well. There was like a super hype moment where Boar went on like a 4K on the mid, and that was pretty crazy from him. So Ascent, they showed up against 7. Against a full 7, Ascent and 7 were like right there, neck and neck, like just battling for that second place. And it's really, really shitty that Captain got food poisoning, and when the rematch happened, it was not quite as close. A 3-0 and then a 4-0. You can see here, Permzilla standing in for Captain. That's absolutely the reason. I mean, Permzilla's fine. I can't talk too much about European players, but even I can tell you that Captain's a bit better than Permzilla, and 7, they can't be happy about a 3rd place there. They wanted to get grand finals, but Mexican food, man, it'll get you. Then they went in, they 4-0'd, 5-0'd Black Swan. All right, fair enough. Coming into playoffs then, their first match is against Tech, and this is kind of where it's like, okay, is Tech going to be beatable at all? Permzilla's fine. I mean, he's still with Permzilla on 7. All right, they still managed to get. Did they get any rounds actually with Permzilla on 7? I don't know if they did actually. Did Permzilla win a round all LAN? I don't think he did. Okay, I was gonna say that they had at least gotten 1 round or a couple of rounds. No, they didn't though. It was his birthday though, so we're gonna let it slide. But back to Ascent. I mean, their match against Tech, this is kind of one where when you walk into it and you're like, all right, are Tech beatable at all in this LAN? And they walk in their first playoff round against Ascent. They haven't had a close match against them all season. The regular season Tech have just completely been dominating Ascent, and it's a 5-0, 4-0. Oof, that doesn't look good. Already a center having a rough time. Knocked in the lower bracket. Then they play against Velocity, and this is one where you're kind of looking at, you're like, maybe they could lose this one, but they come up pretty dominantly, 5-1, 5-2. Their match on Badlands, they actually kind of were slipping. Velocity had a really hype moment where they sort of came back, and we kind of talked about that earlier on. We talked about Velocity, but Ascent still managed to put them down very cleanly, win that game. Then we start up on Sunday, so this is the final day of the LAN. They play against Swift in their first match, and it actually goes to 3 games, 2 golden caps. So, I mean, we haven't talked about Swift yet, but they actually also had a very good LAN. They lose the first one narrowly. Is the first one a golden cap? Yeah. They lose the first one in a golden cap, win the second one in a golden cap, and then completely stomp them in the Snakewater game. So, when we read Nursey's interview, I mean, she kind of talks about that a little bit. Nursey's got a great interview as well. And then, I mean, obviously, their match against 7 is just, like, disappointing. This was day 3, and then this... Was this one day 3 or day 2? No, this one was day 2. So this was 7's first match on day 3, and clearly, I mean, they just didn't show up with their full roster, and they got screwed. So then they go into the grand finals. Ascent have completely made it all the way back, and they're expected to get rolled because they got rolled by Froyotech before, and they didn't play Froyotech in the group stages. But, I mean, if you go into their ESEA results against Froyotech, they actually hadn't played Froyotech yet in ESEA at this point in time. But they didn't do well when they played them after LAN. And in scrims and stuff, I mean, Froyotech was just looking so much better than Ascent. But still, they come out to a good grand finals, and I'm very pleased at how grand finals ended up going. It was a best of 5, and Froyotech won 3 in a row. And Process was not close at all, but Process was a lot of fun. Gullywash was very back and forth. Snakewater was an epic comeback for a little while for Ascent. So, Castling Grand Finals, it was important to me that that game was really close, or was at least good, and I thought it was good. So, I'm glad that Ascent actually put up a fight for Grand Finals. It's kind of sad that that's, like, the definition of good for Ascent, but that's where we're at right now, and Ascent should be proud of how they played at LAN. And then if we read the interview, Nursey kind of touches on a lot of that stuff. They're pretty satisfied. They beat 7 3 times total, but 2 of those, I mean, I don't know if we can really count that. They did get a 5-0 off Swift, but Swift still played very, very well for them. Map 1 and 2 were great. Map 3 was boring. Yeah, I thought, yeah, Map 3 had a lot of silly moments, though, from Froyotech. I mean, they had, like, Yomps on Rocket Jumper, then they had Yomps playing his main, Banny on Medic, the Banny taunts on the boxes. So, certainly if you were looking for a close match, Map 3 was not what you wanted. But Map 1 and 2 gave you a taste of that, so I was happy with it. We were expecting 3-5-0s, me and Mela, so certainly we were happy with how the grand finals went. But here's Nursey's general thoughts on how she played, and then her thoughts as the actual event. Boar and Sai played really, really well. Boar, we won't really talk about otherwise because he's not maining on a team in ESEA, but Boar did really, really well. Especially on Sniper. He didn't go off as much as I was hoping. There were some maps where Boar played Sniper and he really didn't hit anything at all. But he had his moments of glory. He had some frag clips that he can put together now. So definitely I'm looking forward to see what people make for frag movies at this event. And Sai Guy, I mean, I want to save his talk for when we go into 8K, but my god, Sai Guy is certainly the most underrated, before LAN, was the most underrated player in NA. And now he's certainly rated a lot higher in people's minds, I think, but he's crazy. Yeah, Boar's backing up for Froyotech, but I'm not going to talk about him. I'm going to talk about Froyotech, so I'll talk about him now, and he didn't go off every single game, but he had some good games. Do you feel your team would have done better, of course, in the Slemish? This one I'm literally going to read out to you. It's hard to say, as much as I know I shouldn't say this, the chaos that causes online Ascent to mess up wasn't a problem that existed with this LAN team. The problems with the LAN roster was simply due to inexperience with each other and the players. These problems don't exist on current Ascent, but much bigger ones do. I believe if online Ascent don't have the issues we actually do, then absolutely we most likely would have won. As it stands currently, I don't think it made much of a difference. So she kind of hints at it here, but it seems like Ascent are having some problems, and I don't know the full extent of these problems myself, but from what I've heard, they've been solved, but then like a week will pass and suddenly they're plunged into chaos again. So Ascent, they're a strange team. They're having a lot of issues, but I think they're okay now. As some roster, as like a team, I'd like to see them not be in chaos, but certainly, I mean, they say it right here, the chaos. So it's tough to say. We'll see how Ascent ends up performing. If we look at their online results, obviously a 5-1 against Tech. Not what they wanted. Of course, is the problem. Most toxic player in NA. I'm not sure about that one, but yeah. With them, I mean, a 5-1 against Tech, not what they wanted. A 5-4 against Swift, losing, not what they wanted at all. 5-3 against Velocity was good, but I know Velocity, like, went into that match, like, feeling kind of shaky. So the fact that they still got 3 rounds is a little disappointing. But Ascent, I mean, I remember I was watching their scrim right before the Velocity match. It was a scrim against Tech, and they won that scrim. They felt really good, from what I heard about the players. They feel like they've solved their problems as of right before this match. So we'll see if they actually continue to perform. Next week they only play against Animalist, so this should be an easy win for them. Last time they played against Mal was 5-0 on Snakewater, week 3. So fair enough. We can read the rest of this interview. Yeah, going up against Swift. Swift is, I think, a lot better than people think they are. And we'll kind of talk about them there. I like this one as well. Speaking of Yomps, how do you feel about his departure? Heartbroken. Me too, man. Me too. We'll leave that one now. And, yeah. Barring a complete collapse, as far as playoffs are going, Ascent should get 2nd or 3rd. 3rd is definitely in the cards, depending on how they perform against Swift. Currently, they have 9 wins. They should get this one 10, 11, 12 guaranteed wins, and then 13 if they beat Swift, 14 if they can beat Tech, but we'll see if that actually can happen. Meanwhile, Swift are sitting at 7. They're going to get 8 for sure, 9 for sure, 10 for sure, 11 if they beat 8K, which they should, 12 if they can beat Velocity, and then like 13 if they can beat Ascent for the 2nd time. So, you know, Swift have a shot at taking 2nd away from Ascent, but again, just because 2nd and 3rd play each other in playoffs, it doesn't really matter who gets 2nd and who gets 3rd. All you want, in terms of playoff seeding, Marxist always says, the only thing that matters is that you don't get 4th, because if you get 4th, you have to play against Tech first round. And as far as playoff seeding goes, it's not really anything exciting happening. That's what I'm trying to say, because it's kind of exciting who gets into that final playoff spot. It could be 8K, it could be Velocity, but as far as the top 3 go, I mean, Tech's going to get 1st, and then Ascent and Swift are going to play each other 1st in the 2nd round. One of them is going to have a map pick advantage, but really, these 2 teams are going to be playing each other 1st round, and that's going to be a very close match, and I'm very excited for it. So yeah, Swift can do well, I think, but we're still on Ascent, aren't we? So Ascent will probably make playoffs, and they will. Well, I think they'll guaranteed make playoffs, but they will probably get 2nd. They might get 3rd, but it doesn't really matter. Their match against Swift was really, really close, the one that they had already. If we open up the logs here, I know we casted this one. This was on Granary, right? Yeah. This match was almost an hour and a half long, and it went to a golden cap, and Swift won it, obviously, 5-4. I remember watching this one, and I had like a lot of homework to do, but I watched this game instead, and I'm very glad I did. It almost didn't happen, because this is like, I mean, this is a Granary match, right? Granary was, I think, week 4? 1, 2, 3. Yeah, Granary was week 4. It was played on February 25th. So, a bit late, but, you know, still fair enough, I guess. It was basically played in Gully Wash week, which I thought was pretty funny. They actually had to get, like, an admin to come in and be like, play this game, please. But it was very close. It was supposed to be played, I guess, week 4 should have been right before LAN? No, I think it was right after LAN. No, that was right before LAN. So this match should have been played right before LAN, but it didn't happen, and so it was played just kind of recently. And so a 5-4 going in favor of Swift, I mean, that's kind of where the problems are coming from, a sense. When Nursey hints at that stuff in her interview, this is what she's talking about. If we look at their player results, I mean, it was a long game, so damages are pretty low. I mean, we're not that worried about people only getting like 180 DPM. But Marmalou had some crazy damage. Corsa was with 46 frags. But again, and I kind of mentioned here, Ascent didn't really drop to third in my rankings as much as Swift rose to second. I don't think Ascent have gotten that much worse, especially compared to their last season's roster. I mean, Ascent are they're a very good team, but Swift have really improved. And, I mean, Corsa's still getting a lot of frags. Slemnish is still, you know, almost as good as Corsa. Marmalou's still a crazy good roamer. Badonsky's still, like, one of the most experienced players in the game. And Patty's still, like, very good at commanding a team. But, yeah, I know. Then you look at the stats in the other players, and it's like, oh, AIM got 50 frags, and Bot Mode got 47. AIM also had, like, 250 damage almost, so Swift are playing really well, and when we look at their LAN results, that'll be reflected as well. But this was just a crazy good game to watch from both teams, and the fact that Ascent lost it could mean we're seeing some shakeup happen in the second to third rankings of Invite. Because Ascent, obviously, I mean, if you look at the history of Ascent, now we're doing a history lesson for that one guy in chat. If you look at the history of Ascent, I mean, they've gotten quite a few second places. I don't think there's an easy way to like look at that. But they've been second place for a couple of years now. And then just last season, they lose to Swift. And they have like a kind of a shaky roster last season. And then this season, they rebuild their roster like, all right, well, now that was a fluke, right? Swift aren't going to get second again, clearly, because Ascent now have a good roster. And they're not going to drop down to third. But if this keeps happening, if Ascent are still having these issues, and Swift still keeps dropping 50 bombs and playing like AIM and Bot Mode and High Five are like crazy as they are, then yeah, definitely Swift could take second this season, and that would be disappointing for Ascent, but still super hype in terms of the NA scene. So Ascent looking good overall, but gotta be worried for Swift. 8K now, probably like the most improved team since the beginning of the season, maybe. They started the season off with a loss to Anime List, and I mean now they're like beating Velocity, so that's pretty good in my eyes. Pretty much improvement. What about when Swift takes first? That'll be the extreme shakeup, won't it? When Swift end up dethroning Tech, it could happen. But I'm not holding my breath for that. We'll see. Make it to grand finals first, one step at a time. 8K coming in now, have played pretty well. I don't know. Their biggest thing is that they ended up changing their roster out. Mikey for Dingo is just it's a good switch, just on paper and everything. They moved Mikey to sub. Yeah, Mikey shouldn't feel bad with that. I think he's just not that experienced as a player. It was his first time playing in Invite. He played 4 matches as a main, so for 2 weeks he played as a main on this team. Then they were able to bring Dingo in. So it's unfortunate to have such a changing roster. This wasn't even their first roster change. They've made a couple 8K, but they've all been for the better, I think. Mikey's a fine player, but Dingo's a lot more experienced, and I think it's going to be a good swap for him. Yeah, Dingo's Invite experience quite a bit more. You have to go to the next page just to see all of his seasons in ESEA, so I think he'll be good for 8K, but now we can talk about Saigai because we're finally here. Saigai's crazy, dude. I mean, we saw him at LAN playing for Ascent, and he just completely like annihilated everybody. I'm not gonna say he was the best. I want to say he was the best soldier at LAN, because saying Yomps was the best soldier at LAN is a boring answer. But Saigai very well could have been the best soldier at LAN, and like AIM was crazy. Or was AIM's not on this team, is he? No, AIM's on Swift. But Saigai is a very good player, and I think he's kind of carrying this team. I mean, we'll look at the logs just from last week to see this, but Saigai 37, I guess he's not really carrying, but 342 DPM, that's absolutely insane. 300 DPM, like, can we find a match where he doesn't have crazy good DPM? We'll go back like 2 more weeks and we'll see here. Guy 366 DPM. Guy 272, but it was a long game, and he's still topping the server in damage per minute. Now we go Guy 287 again compared to everybody else. That's crazy high. I mean, how far back do we have to go before we find a match where Guy like didn't have really, really good DPM? I don't know if we'll find it. 360. Guy 264, but okay. In this match, he wasn't the best. He was in their match against Froyotech. He didn't top DPM. Minus show plus Guy for velocity. That would be a switch, wouldn't it? I agree with you that Guy is probably better than every other player on his team. Like, I don't know if the players he's playing with are quite on the same caliber as Guy. I mean, that's no offense to like guys like Muffins and Scissor and Rakuso. Obviously, I mean, these guys are really good. Dingo as well. Now that they're playing with him, very good. And I just shouted out everybody except for Sky, so we'll say she's good as well. I'll just say everybody's good, but not really on the same caliber as Guy. I mean, Guy obviously played on Froyotech last season, and Froyotech said he had some playstyle issues, and I would agree with that. That Guy doesn't really fit Froyotech's playstyle, but he certainly fits the playstyle of a lot of other teams. He fit the playstyle of Ascent very, very well. He fits the playstyle of 8K very well. And he would probably do well. I don't know if he would do well on Velocity or Swift, but I think he definitely could because he's a crazy player. If we go back, yeah, this was their match against Froyotech. He still top DPM'd his team, but finally we find a match where somebody on the enemy team had more DPM than him, and it was because he was playing against Banny and Habib. So, okay, fine, he's not as good as Banny and Habib. But then coming out, we'll go back to when they're playing lesser teams. Guy 342 damage per minute. Guy got 211. I don't know what was happening in this game. So this is the first time I'll say he had a poor performance in damage per minute, and that was against Swift in week 2. So since week 2, Guy's been just hitting absolutely insane damage per minute every single game. Like, he doesn't have a bad game. And on LAN, it's the exact same story, right? We don't have it open for this one. But if you open up like the LAN results, right? I'm sure if we look at the Ascent's logs, it's gonna be the exact same story. All right, let's find this. Okay, Ascent, they're not in Group 1. All right, this is against Big Chips, so it's not gonna be that impactful. But right, group stages. Let's see, damage per minute. With this Guy, oh man, I hate logs.tf because now I gotta decipher these aliases. Yeah, so Guy top damage permitting 363. Reopen this tab because I accidentally closed it. This one he didn't hit too high, 273, but it was against Big Chips, so I mean, I don't think he had to on that game. Now against 7, 231, still second for his team, but you're playing against 7, so it's going to be a very slow game. Everybody's going to have low DPM. This one he didn't do too great. Alright, so maybe at LAN he wasn't that great against 7. Oh boy, this one against Black Swan. Wasn't this like the most lopsided match of like all LAN? Yeah, Patty got 561 damage per minute. Yeah. The only reason Sai's on 8K is because he got left out of the invite shuffle. I would agree with that, yeah. Guy certainly deserves to be on a better team, and we'll see what he does next season. I could certainly see a future where he leaves this team. But I can also see a future where he pulls this team up into one that makes playoffs. Before we talk about their playoff standings, because that's certainly something I want to get into, I do want to take a look at Dingo, because since he started playing, he started off a bit slow. I don't know how far back we have to go for Dingo to be joining the team. He's probably not on back here, but Dingo started a bit slow. He wasn't playing for this match. Here, so his first match, he did okay. 235 DPM, 18 frags. Very low on the frags, but he's playing Demo Man, so that's not like the worst thing in the world. A respectable damage next to Guy, though. I mean, it's going to be kind of tough to have a crazy good damage. But then you come out here, 212 DPM from your Demo Man. Not great. Now you come up against Hooligans for Hire. He gets 5 frags the whole game. 232 damage. That's like lowest damage on your team. Okay, Dingo, come on, please step it up here. But then he hits like 30 frags, 290 damage in their match against Anime. Alright, this is kind of what we're talking about for Demoman. And since then, he's definitely been pulling in the work. So I think probably he just had to get used to playing again. When was the last time he played before 8K? Like, in the last week, he's definitely stepped it up. Last 2 weeks. Since they played against Anime List. So, I guess only last week. But now he's playing well. If I'd looked at him, I obviously didn't do breakfast analysis the past 2 weeks. But if I had, I would have been a bit skeptical of this swap. I guess he played on Woodpig Quantum for 9 games last season. And he's played every season, actually. But maybe he hasn't been pugging since then or whatever. But now I'm not worried. I think 8K certainly have the potential to make it into playoffs. We'll see. Currently, they're at 6 wins, right? This is a free win. They should get 7. This is a free win. They're guaranteed 8, basically. Because they're playing the 2 worst teams in Invite, right? But then they need to beat... Then they play Swift, Froyo, and Velocity. And these are winnable, but really tough to win. I think Velocity, we said, we're secured 9 wins for sure. So if Velocity beat Swift or Froyo or 8K, they should make it in, because that brings them up. Basically, both these teams have 3 matches against tough teams. Both these teams play Swift, both these teams play Froyo Tech, and both these teams play each other, obviously. So, if they win the same amount of those games, if Velocity win 0 of them, or if Velocity win 1 and 8K win 1, Velocity will make playoffs. If 8K can win 1 more match than Velocity do in those 3 games, then it will come down to a round differential. And if 8K can win like 2 of these, if 8K beats Swift and they beat Velocity, and Velocity lose to Swift, and they obviously lose to 8K, then 8K are guaranteed playoff spot. Beating Swift is probably the hardest part here. I think what'll probably end up happening, like their best shot for playoffs is probably beating TF Crew, losing to Swift but getting a lot of rounds, losing to Fryotech but getting a lot of rounds, beating Velocity, tying them in round differentiation, and then beating Hooligans for Hire and beating Velocity that way. Probably going to be easier than beating Swift. Of course, that relies on Velocity not getting many rounds in the rest of their games, and then that relies on Velocity losing to Swift here. As I said, Velocity winning this basically secures them in the playoffs. Maybe if Velocity win this one, and then 8K can win against Swift and win against Velocity and have more rounds, Velocity still don't make playoffs. But really, I think 8K might be the better team right now just because they beat Velocity recently. I guess it wasn't that recent anymore. I think 8K is a better team, but Velocity have more opportunities to get into playoffs, and because of that, I would predict Velocity to make it into that 4th seed. But certainly, I mean, if 8K can make it in, that would be absolutely crazy for the invite scene, and especially for Saigai as a player, just to prove his worth. Like, he's gonna take these not bad players, but mid-invite level players, and just pull them to fucking pull them to playoffs with him. Just he's gonna get them there for sure. I'm curious how much heals he actually takes. It's like I imagine it's a lot. Yeah, 6,000. Not crazy lots, but certainly on the more side as well. Coming for blood, Velocity. Oh yeah, and they've had very close games as well. I didn't really talk about that, but they're an entertaining team to watch for sure. A 5-4 against Anime. Oh yeah, this is actually a crazy close game. The one against Velocity we've talked about already, but I want to highlight this game real quick. They were down 4-0, and then they made a 5-4 comeback. I was so mad that we didn't cast this game, and especially because it was scheduled for Thursday, right? It was scheduled for Thursday. And then at 9:23 my time, so this is 11:23 Eastern, they asked to play at 9:30. At 9:28, they agree on the schedule change, and then they play at 9:30. So we would have casted this game if it was on Thursday, but then they rescheduled 2 minutes before they played, and we didn't realize that was happening. I think somebody streamed it. I think you can watch the VOD of this game. Was it Sai who streamed it? I feel like it was Sai or somebody like that. It was like a Swift player or something like that. Was that Sai? Or AIM? Maybe it was AIM. I think like AIM was in the STV and like streamed or something. We probably won't vodcast it, but I recommend you watch this either through somebody's stream VOD or watching the STV, because my god, this was a crazy close game. Even just look at the frags, like 166 to 163. Damage was certainly in favor of 8K, but being able to come back from a 4-0 is almost unheard of in TF2. So being able to do that, pull it off against Anime List. The fact that it was against Anime List doesn't really bode well for if they want to be able to beat Swift and Velocity. But, you know, we'll kind of let it slide. And did we talk about Anime already? No, Anime's the last team we want to talk about. Okay. Because I definitely want to talk about this game from their perspective as well. But 8K, coming for playoffs. They can do it. I want to see it happen. Swift NA, obviously making it to LAN. Had a very good LAN for them as well. Basically everybody except for Velocity had a good LAN. Let's see. Coming into their group stages, they were in Group 1. Rolling TF Crew, exactly what they needed to do. Getting the first round off Freyotech at LAN. That's impressive to some extent. And then dominating Velocity. That's probably the most impressive thing, because this is the team they're closest against, right? Or it was before LAN. I wouldn't say that after LAN. After LAN, I would say Swift's biggest rivals are Ascent. But pre-LAN, it was definitely like Velocity Swift fighting for third. Now it's Velocity Ascent fighting for second. So Swift have stepped it up. Then when they go into playoffs and they start off match against 7, they almost won. Right? I remember watching the Sunshine match. It went to Golden Cap, didn't it? Yeah, I remember watching the Sunshine match, and I was talking, I can't remember who I was talking to, but I was like, Yite on Demo is about to beat an entire continent of TF2. Because that's what it was. I mean, they almost beat 7, and this was full strength 7 too. I think this was before the food poisoning. Right? February 17th. That was a Saturday, so maybe he was still feeling a little wheezy. We'll see what stats Captain got. Yeah, Captain played fine, dude. Captain 2nd damage on his team, 3rd damage to the server, and got 13 frags. So a reasonable amount of frags. So, no, I don't think it was, I don't think Captain was sick at this point. I could be wrong. These are Golden Cap logs, so they're all going to be skewed. 664 DPM, 0 deaths. Yate's the best demo man in the world. But it was only a 2.5 minute round, so... No, I mean, playing against 7 and almost winning, that's huge for Swift. Then they get knocked down, and they beat Black Swan pretty handily. Then they go up against Ascent, and again, they beat them in the first match. They go to Golden Cap for the second one. The third one, I don't know what happens. They get tilted or something. And maybe in some sense, Swift had a bad LAN because they didn't pull out the upsets, but they were so close to getting the upsets twice. They almost upset Ascent. They almost upset 7. Man, it would have been very exciting if Swift had been able to do so. But I mean, even their players, like I think AIM, there's somebody on the forums right now who has like the overall rewind stats just in a huge long document. It's really interesting to read. And I mean, Swift's stats, some of their players are just crazy. Like AIM is absolutely nuts. He hit like 50 air shots or something. I remember like as casters, we were just chilling in, or we were like, you know, we were going over the stats as casters do. And we were like, oh yeah, this is something like this, and yeah, you know, air shots are pretty even across the board. It was like 10, you know, 15. Oh, this guy's got 20. You look at AIM, and he's got like 50 air shots or something like that. And I don't know, land ping was very nice to AIM, and bot mode as well is incredible on this team. We can just like open like last week's matches to really check out their highlight players on the team, because they played great. Especially they had Skis playing with them instead of Laz. I think Zilly played Roamer, I'm assuming, or maybe Pocket. I don't know. Zilly played Soldier, and they got Skis to play Medic, and I thought Skis played fine. I didn't really look into his stats or take super notice of him at LAN, but clearly the roster shakeup didn't hurt them. Laz is, I don't want to say a bad player, but maybe one of the weaker players on the team. I don't think he's as standout as like bot mode or AIM or Yite are. Yite's really good for not being a demo main, certainly. Cat Jazz in chat saying AIM is one of the most underrated players in North America. TBH, a lot of players on Swift are really good. Yeah, definitely. I think Botmode's probably my pick for best player on the team, but AIM is right there. High Five is like good as well. Botmode's probably my pick for best player. I know there was like some there was a lot of controversy, maybe not controversy, but like drama at the beginning of the season because who was it? I think Velocity really wanted Botmode to play with them, or somebody really wanted Botmode to play with them. I think it was Botmode. I could be getting like everything completely wrong in my head because it was a while ago now. But Botmode wanted to play Scout on Swift instead, and certainly I think he made the right decision because Swift is a beast of a team. At the beginning of the season, they weren't even that good. Like they got 4-0'd by Froyotech, and then they lost to Velocity. Now, I mean, Velocity is like a team they should be beating fairly easily. We'll see. We'll see. Coming up, and we're definitely casting this match. I think it's match of the week next week. So like this is the one to watch for them, but no, it's gonna be interesting to see how they stand up now. So we're gonna compare their match in week 3 when they played against Snakewater, or on Snakewater. It was a 4-3, very close. Velocity narrowly edged out. I'm predicting when they play against Velocity this time, I'm predicting like a 5-1, 5-2, something like that. Maybe not that extreme. Maybe a 5-3 or like a 5-4, but like still definitely in favor of Swift. Because I think Swift have gotten a whole lot better, and Velocity have just sort of been like, and have maybe even started to decline since the start of the season. So, we'll see. I mean, Swift played very well at LAN. They play very well online. And, again, they should have a lot of close games next week, but it shouldn't matter for playoffs for them. For Velocity, it matters. And for 8K, it matters how these games go. But for Swift, they're almost certainly not going to drop down into 4th. They've got 7 right now. They're going to get 8, 9, 10. So they should be sitting at a minimum of 10, even if they lose to Velocity, even if they lose to 8K. It's not mathematically impossible for Velocity or maybe even 8K to upset and get 3rd. I think it's impossible for 8K, or at least realistically impossible. There is a path where Velocity sneaks into the 3rd playoff spot and Swift fall down to 4th, but I think, especially with how these teams have been playing, I think that's very unlikely. And almost certainly, Swift will be playing in either, or will be going into playoffs with either 2nd or 3rd seed. And as we discussed when we were talking about Ascent, that doesn't really matter. Either way, you're playing against Ascent because Ascent's going to be getting the other seed. I think now that ESEA did a change, I think last season, that players or teams can now pick which maps they're playing in playoffs. So now it kind of matters a little bit more than it used to, because if you go into 2nd seed, you have map pick advantage. But otherwise, it's not a huge deal for these teams. Certainly they'll be looking for it, and certainly they're going to want to win these games. But if they don't, if they want to like kind of take it easy this week, they can. Yeah. So Swift are very good. Moving on now, this has been a long episode, but I kind of knew it was going to be a long episode, so I'm okay with this. Next team we want to talk about is Froyotech. They're very good, and there is actually a bit to talk about. Usually in breakfast analysis, when I go into Froyotech, I'm like, yeah, they're good, moving on. But this time there is a bit to talk about. At LAN, they started off the LAN as dominating as they do online, dropping 1 round to Velocity in 2 maps, 1 round to Swift in 2 maps, 1 round to King's Crew, actually. That's pretty funny. I'm assuming they were very loud about that, King's Crew were, just because King Crew are a very loud team. Going to playoffs, 0 rounds dropped to Ascent, 0 rounds dropped to 7. This was a fun match to watch, just because Sideshow and Bren were in the crowd, and they were just very drunk and very loud, chanting all sorts of things. And I'm assuming a lot of the Froyotech players didn't seem too happy. Yomps was laughing a bit at it, but the rest of them, I mean, they were just shit talking Froyotech the whole time. So that was kind of a fun match to watch from the stands. And then this game, definitely the closest match. These 2 maps right here, and just the game overall was the closest match Froyotech has played since 2017. Since Yomps has joined their roster for sure. So I'm glad that the closest match they've had, Yomps is shit, yeah, exactly. I'm glad that the closest match they've had all year was Rewind Grand Finals, because if you're gonna have a close game, that's definitely the place to do it. At least from a viewer perspective. So I'm happy about that. And you can kind of see, so LAN was right here, the gap between games, 13th to 22nd. This was the LAN gap. So they didn't play any games here because they were in California. And since LAN, I kind of talked about earlier, they haven't had a 5-0 roll, right? Before LAN, it was like 5-1, but then 5-0, 5-0, or 4-0, 4-0, 5-0, 5-0. They were having a lot of 5-0s. They dropped 2 rounds to 8K, they dropped 1 round to Anime, and I think these were kind of like throwaways. But at the beginning of the season, I think Fryotech was definitely in a mindset of, we need to play every match as serious as possible and be as good as possible because we're training for LAN. And since LAN, it seems like they kind of don't care as much anymore. I mean, they're dropping 3 rounds to Black Swan, and we talked about this earlier when we looked at their score, but Shade's getting 136 damage per minute, so unless he's just a crossbow god, I don't think he was on medic for the whole game. Certainly some of the game, because, I mean, that's not a great stat line if you're on a damage class the whole time, but probably it seems that Fryotech aren't taking things as serious as they were before the LAN, and so maybe that could affect the rest of the season. It'll be interesting to see kind of towards the ends. They've got like last 2 weeks. Next week they don't have anything to worry about. They'll probably like off class and meme in their game against CF Crew as well, but last 2 weeks they play a lot of close games. They play 8K, who we've talked about as a formidable opponent, Velocity, who are obviously, and Velocity and AK both are really going to be looking for rounds because that's very important for them to both make playoffs against Fryotech. They probably won't look to win. I mean, that'd be the goal, but realistically, they're probably looking for rounds in this game. So depending on how much Fryotech jokes around in these games could actually have heavy playoff implications. Then they play Hooligans for Hire, whatever. Then they play Ascent, their last match of the season on Badlands. So how serious they take this game will be kind of telling for how serious they're taking playoffs. I assume just because it's Fryotech, just because it's Banny, they're going to be taking playoffs very seriously. Maybe not quite as serious as they took LAN, but I don't expect Shade to be hitting 160 DPM in playoffs. We'll see, though. I mean, Fryotech could certainly do it and certainly still win. But if they let their guard down too much, if they keep trying to, do these silly things, shake up the meta, I think as Banny called it when he put Yomps on Rocket Jumper, they might drop a couple rounds, maybe even a game or two, a map or two in grand finals or something against a team like Swift or a team like Ascent. Very possible. If any team's going to be able to beat Fryotech, I mean, the competition last season, Fryotech could joke around and stuff, and they could have like a weird roster with Saigai and stuff, and it didn't matter because every other team in the league was garbage. Okay, last season was a terrible season because Ascent was bad and Swift were bad, and I mean, they weren't bad. I shouldn't call players bad because they're definitely better than I was, but compared to Fryotech, I mean, they're just not there at all. This season, Fryotech might be a better team, but their competition's also a lot better, right? With Yomps, Fryotech is Fryotech is the best iteration of Fryotech we've seen, in my opinion. But they've also got heavy competition right now that they didn't have last season. I'm not going to say it's the heaviest they've ever faced, because obviously the days of like mix-up and all that, Fryotech wasn't getting first every single season. They weren't Fryotech back then, but the Banny team wasn't getting first every season. That was that was probably closer in terms of competition, but right now, compared to the last couple of seasons, right now might be the hardest we've seen in a while in terms of competition for Fryotech. So I don't know, if they slip too much, they might see themselves losing more rounds than they want. I'm not going to say they're going to lose grand finals or anything, but I don't think it's impossible. Coming in, there's a Yomps interview here. It's fine. I don't think there's anything super interesting in this interview. They won, and Yomps was like, "Yep, we won. We beat Ascent. I'm staying with Fryotech." So obviously, very awful that Seven couldn't compete. They kind of talk about that. One last team to talk about here. It is My Anime List, and they had a rough week last week. I'm glad that we just started talking about them now because, my God, 4-5, 4-3, and both of them were comebacks. If we see here, their game against Velocity, they go up 3-0, and then second half, Velocity get 3 rounds, and then beat them in overtime. Their match against 8K, they go up 4-0, and then the second half, 8K get 4 rounds and then beat them in overtime. Like, that's gotta be so demoralizing for Anime List. I don't know if they just choke or what their deal is. I don't know what this meme is, but sure. We are the old Golden State Warriors. Like, clearly they have had a rough week on Gully Wash. Their past results have been pretty much what we expect. They're kind of, I always don't know where to put them in my list. If I should put them like below Black Swan or like above 8K. Now I have them like, I put 8K so high that I definitely wasn't going to put them above Velocity. But yeah, I mean, 2 very unfortunate games last week. They definitely could have won both these games, and the fact that Velocity almost lost to Anime List, I mean, that kind of draws attention to how they're doing as a team right now. Because, you know, my Anime List, they're good, but certainly at this point in time, at the beginning of the season, I kind of thought they could make playoffs, but at this point in time, they haven't really improved to the same extent that a team like 8K has. So I don't think there's any chance of them making playoffs. They've only got 4 wins right now. They should get 5, 6, 7. So no, it's like they would have to beat like Ascent and Swift just to get to 9 wins, and at that point, like, you're just trying to like scrape in for rounds. So I don't think they can make playoffs. Maybe if a miracle happens, but realistically, it's not happening for them. At the beginning of the season, I kind of thought they could. Yeah, if they had won those last 2 games, they'd be looking for a playoff spot. Certainly, they would be above 8K in my list. They might even be above, yeah, I guess they'd be above Velocity as well. So losing these 2 games really sucks for them. This basically is the nail in the coffin. Those 2 Golden Cap losses where the other team completely came back on them. That's probably donezo for Anime this season, which is kind of sad, but it also opens up the door for a really nice rivalry between 8K and Velocity fighting for that final playoff spot, so I'm not too upset about it. I am upset that we didn't get to cast either of these games. This one wasn't really on my radar for casting. This one we should have casted, but we got tricked and they changed last second. Whatever. Probably looking to end the season 7-9. Not really a lot of chances to get more than 7 wins after those 2 games. So I think for the rest of the season, Anime, they'll probably keep playing and stuff just because they need that banny check. But yeah, the rest of the season, it doesn't really matter for them. If they want to keep improving as a team, obviously they would want to try as hard as they can and get some more rounds and stuff. But as far as playoffs and stuff go, they're pretty much done. So that's basically it. For breakfast analysis, we went over all the teams and how Invite's doing right now. As far as the league as a whole is going, there's a lot of interesting stuff happening right now. Swifts are very, very good, and I think they're underestimated right now. Ascent might be like in chaos. A lot of like Froyotech players are tweeting cryptic stuff, and if you ever see that, it's probably a reference to the troubles on Ascent. Most recent I've heard from like people who know the players is that they feel they've worked out their issues, but then they drop 3 rounds to Velocity. Velocity's also having a lot of issues, so we'll see if they even can continue to make playoffs. 8K are going to have a tough time making playoffs, but they certainly can. And then everybody below, bottom 4 of Invite aren't really that interesting right now. Hooligans for Hire might get a win. TF Crew could continue to improve. Black Swan feel like they're improving as well, which is good for them. But as far as the overall scene goes, the top 5 are really interesting right now. Next week, in terms of games to watch, I believe there's 2 Swift games going on that are interesting. Yeah, so both these games very important for the team that's not Swift to be able to get some rounds. Looks like they want to play Thursday and Thursday, so I don't know what the deal is with this. But we'll see when these games actually get played. Expect those to be covered on TFTV, barring any disasters. And as far as this stream's going, thank you for watching. I know it's been a very long episode, but I thought it was very important to get this one out. And I apologize for skipping 2 weeks, but because I did that, it means we have a very long episode. I want to finish this coffee because I want to roll up my rim. For the non-Canadians watching, every year Tim Hortons, like the main coffee shop in Canada, does a promotion where you can roll up your rim and maybe win something after you finish your drink. So right before we leave, let's see. Please play again. So we didn't win shit. And on that note, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week, and on casts in probably on Thursday and Wednesday. So see you then.